I never thought I would be one of those people writing on the internet about family drama, but here I am. I, 29F, grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents and my older brother, Daniel, 32M. We were never wealthy, but my parents worked hard to give us a decent life. My dad owned a small mechanic shop, and my mom worked as a nurse. For most of my life, I thought Daniel was the golden child. He was charismatic, played football in high school, and everyone adored him. I, on the other hand, was the quiet bookworm who moved away after college and rarely came home. I didn't resent him, at least not consciously, but I always felt like I was standing in his shadow. 2 years ago, my dad got sick. At first, it seemed like a stubborn flu, but after months of tests, we learned it was cancer. Everything changed. I started coming home more often, helping Mom with hospital visits, taking care of bills, and handling all the little details. Daniel wasn't really around. He lived 30 minutes away but always had excuses: work, his girlfriend, his friends. When Dad passed away last year, I was the one holding Mom's hand in the hospital. Daniel didn't even arrive until 2 hours later. The funeral was rough, but what really cracked our family was the matter of Dad's will. Dad had always been organized, and he'd left a clear testament. His shop was to go to Daniel, since he had worked there a bit in high school and supposedly showed interest in continuing it someday. The house, savings, and everything else was to be split between me and Daniel. On paper, it sounded fair. But here, where the trouble started. After the funeral, Daniel suddenly became obsessed with the shop. He made a big speech about honoring Dad's legacy and turning it into something bigger. The problem? He had no real experience. Within 3 months, he'd run the business into the ground. He borrowed money from shady people, took out loans, and stopped paying property taxes. My mom called me crying because debt collectors were leaving notices at her door. When I confronted Daniel, he just shrugged and said, "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Dad trusted me with this." I snapped back. "Dad trusted you to be responsible, not reckless. You're dragging his memory through the mud." We had our first real screaming match in years. But things got worse. Last month, Mom called me late at night, sobbing. She confessed that Daniel had convinced her to sign over her share of the savings, temporarily, to cover his debts. She trusted him. Of course, the money disappeared almost immediately. Mom had worked her whole life, and her safety net was gone. I drove to Daniel's apartment and demanded an explanation. He opened the door with his girlfriend, Emily, lounging on the couch. She rolled her eyes as if I were the problem. I asked, "Where, Mom's money?" Daniel said, "Relax, it's an investment. Once the shop is back on its feet, she'll get it back." I yelled, "You destroyed the shop. There's nothing to revive." Emily cut in, "Why are you always attacking him? He's trying. Maybe if you weren't so uptight, you'd see that." That's when I lost it. I told Daniel he was selfish, irresponsible, and that Dad would be ashamed of him. He threw a glass against the wall and shouted, "Don't you dare use Dad against me. You left this family years ago. You don't get to act like the hero now." We didn't speak for weeks after that. The final straw came 2 weeks ago. Mom ended up in the hospital from stress, hypertension, and exhaustion. When the doctor told me she needed rest and financial stability, I knew I couldn't let Daniel keep ruining her life. I went to a lawyer to see if we could reverse the transfer of funds or hold him accountable. The lawyer said it was tricky because Mom had signed willingly, but there might still be options if we could prove manipulation. When Daniel found out, he exploded. He sent me a string of texts. "You're trying to destroy me. You've always been jealous. If Dad were alive, he'd side with me." But then my aunt Mom's sister called me privately. She told me, "Don't back down. Your brother has been taking advantage of your mother for years. Your dad saw it too, but he always hoped Daniel would grow up. He never did." Hearing that broke me. I'd always thought maybe I was too hard on him, maybe I was blinded by resentment. But no, he really had been bleeding our family dry for years, and Mom was just too kind to say no. The worst part, Mom is still defending him. She says things like, "He's just lost, he'll figure it out, and don't fight, your siblings, you need each other." She refuses to see that he's the one causing her pain. Last night, Daniel showed up at Mom's house while I was there. He stormed in, yelling about betrayal and family loyalty. Mom begged us to stop. I stood up to him and said, "You are not entitled to Mom's money. You are not entitled to Dad's legacy. You need help, but until you admit it, you're not welcome in this house." He froze. For the first time, he didn't yell back. He just looked at me with this mix of rage and hurt, then walked out. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I went too far. I know he's my brother and part of me still loves him, but I also feel like he's a stranger. My mom is heartbroken, caught in the middle. My aunt supports me, but some extended relatives think I'm being cruel for turning on family. I don't know what the future looks like. I just know I can't keep watching my mom's health and savings be destroyed by someone who refuses to take responsibility. Maybe one day Daniel will realize what he's done, but until then, I need to protect the only parent I have left.